It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Appreciate you being here. You can find out more about me on my X feed, also Facebook, both at Dan Mandis Show. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 at WTN. I always forget to plug my Twitter. I should say my X, again, at Dan Mandis Show, also on Facebook. So if you would follow me, that would be appreciated. I'll follow you back. So everybody knows what the election was focused on. We all know, by and large, that there were a couple of big issues. Number one, illegal immigration. Number two, the economy. Number three, Joe Biden sucked and Kamala Harris may have been worse. So that's the big question. Now that the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the Resolute desk, will they be able to focus, and will they be able to unite, and will they be able to execute what the American people voted on? Here's the problem that Republicans are going to have, is that in a lot of these Democrat-run cities, and this is part of the news cycle this morning, some of these Democrat-run cities, in fact, I'm pretty sure all of the major ones, they are saying that they will not comply with Donald Trump and the mass deportation. And so there's a lot of people that are very frustrated about this because we know that who Donald Trump and Tom Homan are going to go after first are these folks that are murderous and raping illegal aliens and the ones that are gangbangers, like Tren de Aragua. They've been in the news a lot. And so as much as we hear about those horrific gang members, we also hear these politicians in some of these local cities and states who are saying that they don't care how bad, how god-awful these illegal aliens are, these gangbangers, these drug traffickers, these, predators. They're not going to comply with Donald Trump.
We're not going to cooperate. We're not going to ask our police force to serve as ICE agents.
I'm going to do everything that I can to protect our undocumented immigrants, the residents of our state.
I will fight you every step of the way.
If it's contrary to our values, we will fight to the death.
Would the Massachusetts State Police assist in mass deportations?
No, absolutely not.
We are not cooperating with those efforts that actually threaten the safety of everyone by causing widespread fear.
Isn't that insane? I mean, in a lot of those sound bites, and again, those are mayors and governors and so forth. But in all of those sound bites in that montage put together by Fox News, you hear them say they have this great concern with the safety of their citizens. We all know what's going on in these cities, of course, and people that live in those cities know what's going on, and people are being murdered, people are being raped, and it's awful. And the other morning, I reported to you that there's a story out there that Tren de Aragua is going to be in, I think they said, more than half the country by February. So the president has to do something. And if these folks won't comply, well, then he and his administration, they need to have a plan B. Well, Stephen Miller and President Trump, they have fired a shot across the bow. Listen to this. California officials, along with dozens of others across the country, have now received letters from Stephen Miller's nonprofit, America First Legal. Now, if you don't know who Stephen Miller is, he is part of the Trump administration. I think he's going to be a big-time policy advisor. And Stephen Miller is an immigration hawk. I mean, besides Tom Homan, if you want somebody who takes immigration and illegal immigration seriously, you want Stephen Miller. And so his nonprofit, America First Legal, has now warned a lot of these mayors and governors and so forth of the consequences for interfering with or impeding illegal immigration enforcement. Miller, of course, I just said, has been named President-elect Donald Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. In a written statement, the nonprofit said it had sent 249 letters to elected officials in states and cities with sanctuary policies. The officials who received the letters include Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, Los Angeles Police Department Chief Jim McDonnell, San Diego County Supervisor Nora Vargas, and California Attorney General Rob Bonta, among others. The letters, all dated December 23rd, state that people living in the country illegally are subject to removal and that it is a crime to conceal, harbor, or shield them. Tom Homan has come out and said, I will arrest you if you interfere with what we're trying to do. As Attorney General, they say on December 4th of 2024, you stated that the state of California will not enforce federal immigration laws, encouraging defiance by all California jurisdictions. The letter to Bonta reads in part, this rhetoric illustrates the state's intent to blatantly violate federal law. Such lawlessness subjects you and your subordinates to significant risk of criminal and civil liability. Accordingly, we are sending this letter to put you on notice of this risk and insist that you comply with our nation's laws. The fact of the matter is that you and the other officials who support or enforce sanctuary laws, policies, and regulations have a very personal stake in the matter. You each could face criminal prosecution and civil liability for your illegal acts, the letter concludes. I don't know about you, but I love that letter because it is putting them on notice and it is warning them that they've got to get their crap together. I mean, it is stunning, and I know a lot of you feel this way. It is stunning when you see what's going on in these cities and they just don't seem to care. Yet in that montage that I played of mayors and governors, they keep saying that they're going to protect the citizens of their city and their state. Well, what the hell is a citizen? Please tell me. Because a citizen is different than an illegal alien. So now the question is, they're going to go in. Are they going to go into California? Are they going to arrest the Attorney General? I think that's a big question. But I love what Tom Homan says. He's been going after these so-called leaders of Democrat-run cities and states, and this has been all over social media.
Shame on any elected representative, council person, any mayor, any governor who don't want to remove public safety threats from your community, and they're here illegally. That is your number one responsibility, is protect your communities. So if you're not going to do it, President Trump and ICE will.
I love how he says, get the hell out of the way. I love that. And you hear this stuff all the time, right? Guys commit crimes, heinous crimes at that, and ICE wants to get them out of our country, but oftentimes local authorities keep them and then release them. And you see these stories all the time, and it is so frustrating. It's like, wait a minute. This dude carjacked somebody at knife point or with a gun, and he went on a joyride, and he got into an accident, hurt or killed somebody else. ICE wanted a detainer on this guy, and you said no, and you just released them. 3 months later, he raped somebody or he killed somebody. Because this stuff happens all the time. Andy Biggs was on Fox News. Now, if you know Andy Biggs, he is a Republican out of Arizona. And, yeah, he was on Fox News, and he talked about how in his state of Arizona, there's lawmakers who are saying they simply will not comply with Donald Trump's plans of mass deportation.
Shame on any elected representative, council person, any mayor, any governor who don't want to remove public safety threats from your community.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Homan doesn't get it. I don't get it either. And Andy Biggs doesn't understand it either. And it is horrifying.
Money talks, It is the number one leverage point that the federal government has. And we are still a federalist government. And that means that we respect the states, but they have to comply with constitutional obligations and laws that we pass. And this is one, and they're violating it. And so money will be the leverage point, I believe, for the Trump administration and this Congress going in against these states that want to violate the law.
So that's going to be a big question. I mean, this is going to be, I got to tell you, and this is one of the reasons why, you know, this whole conversation about H-1B visas, which, you know, we've been covering extensively the last several days, didn't really touch it tonight because I think there's a lot of things going on. But for me, when I see this argument over H-1B visas, and I'm passionate about it, I am. But for the Republicans to be fighting about this is fine because that's what we do. We hash out policy. I've never seen it quite hashed out like we did on X the last several days. But we've got really big fish to fry. We've got we have lawmakers that aren't going to cooperate at the local level, at the state level. We have MS-13 and we have Tren de Aragua. They are all over America. We do have these murderers and rapists that we need to get out of this country. We have a lot going on. And we've got a lot that we need to accomplish. And so for me, I loved that. And this is why I sort of put a cap on the whole H-1B thing. Because Elon Musk came out and he said, yeah, you got to fix the system. And so what I love is that Musk actually agreed with and understands that, yeah, the H-1B visa system, it is full of fraud. It is leading to American citizens getting fired. And, you know, people coming in from India or China and replacing them at a cheaper rate. So get in there, and Elon Musk, in the news today, apparently he's renting a room at Mar-a-Lago so that he can be close to Donald Trump. So clearly you've got Musk who has Trump's ear. So get that fixed, H-1B, get it fixed. And I don't believe that it needs to be expanded either, because we do have already other visas in place for those exceptional people, as I've mentioned, and the current H-1B program, at least to me, I believe that it actually needs to be restricted, fixed, and not expanded like a lot of other Republicans want to do, and also certainly the Democrats do as well. The phone number is 866-90 Red Eye. Paul is in Pennsylvania on Red Eye Radio. Paul, thanks for calling in.
Thanks, Dan. Hey, I just had one comment about the panhandlers, the people holding the signs. I'm a truck driver. I drive through a lot of major cities, and I've noticed that a lot of the signs just say, I want money. You know, you'll really see the people that really need help will just say, I need help. And they'll take any help that you can give them. You know, if you want to give them some food, you know, that's great. But I just noticed that the people that need the help are just so humble, they'll just say, I need your help.
You know, hey, Paul, let me ask you, I'm actually curious. Do you give to people that are hanging out on the street, you know, panhandlers, if you will?
I have, and I'll tell you an interesting story. There was a guy that used to stand in the same spot in Pennsylvania where I would go to my terminal, and drivers would give him food, and he would throw the food out in the road so it'd get run over. He said, I don't want your food, I want your money. So I try to. I work for a grocery market or grocery store chain, and I'll go get $200 or $300 in gift cards, like $10 gift cards, and just give them away to people if I see them in the store. It looks like they need help. I don't usually stop the truck because you can't really stop a tractor trailer in traffic in the big city. But I try to help when I can.
Yeah, and Paul, I appreciate it. I was thinking as I'm listening to Paul, what motivates you to give to somebody? I'm actually genuinely, I don't think I've ever done this on Red Eye Radio, but I want to know. I know it's the last hour live, but I want to know. 866-90 Red Eye. What motivates you to give to someone who is panhandling? I've had a number of, and don't get me wrong, if you heard previously in the show, I was, very unsympathetic, or at least it sounded like I was unsympathetic about people who are panhandlers and so forth. But I have given to homeless people or panhandlers. They're different, obviously, but I have given to those folks on a number of occasions. I really have. And I'm curious as to what motivates you to give to somebody. If I see the same person on the same corner every day, day in and day out for weeks at a time, I'm not going to give to that person. But one of the people that I did give to, this was back when I was about 19 years old and living in Los Angeles. I'm going to tell you that story coming up next, but I do want to know from you. 866-90-RED-EYE. What inspires you to give to someone who is a panhandler? I've got some thoughts on that because I'm very cynical about panhandlers. But there are some that I'll give to. I'm going to talk about that straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by Howes Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Among the top 10 weather stories for 2024, in no particular order, per USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey, multi-day tornadic outbreaks, such as the first of two such events occurring in late April.
That outbreak resulted in 7 fatalities from 6 individual tornadoes and caused almost $2 billion worth in damages, mainly across the central and into parts of the southern United States as well as the Midwest.
The second outbreak in late May in a stretch in the Midwest and Mississippi Valley resulted in,
particularly from May 21st through the 26th, we saw extremely active weather, 7 deadly tornadoes resulting in 21 fatalities and a price tag of more than $8 billion in damages from that multi-day late May outbreak.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Asking you a talk show hosty kind of question, which I don't typically do, but we've been talking off and on about homeless people and panhandlers and, stuff like that tonight. And my question to you is this. What inspires you to give to someone? Does it take a sign? Does it take somebody with a dog? Is it a person with kids? What do they have to say to you, and how do they have to behave? I'll tell you what I say coming up next, but I want to say hello to Daryl in Wisconsin on Red Eye Radio. Daryl, what do you base your decision on if you give to folks?
Oh, good morning, sir. Many, hopefully few, some will understand this. The Holy Spirit is seldom do I give to someone panhandling. There are times where you have to be a Christian to really know, where you know that the Lord is moving in you and something stirs up, and yes, somebody is in need, and I will give and give generously. But it's very rare. But there are times that the Holy Spirit convicts me, or and I can feel that the person is sincerely in need, and that's when I give.
See, that's the problem, Daryl. I appreciate the call, and I really do appreciate what you say. That's the problem, though. Like, how do you know who is sincere? I got a note from somebody on Facebook. It's a private message. Guy says, there's a dude in Murfreesboro, here in Tennessee, that sits at the corner at Walmart on Old Fort. He's a panhandler. He took the money people gave him and bought a new car. They think that that's their job. See, that's the problem.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
It's 866-90 Red Eye. That is the phone number, 866-907-3339. So when I give to the Nashville Rescue Mission, that's how I give to the homeless folks. I rarely, if ever, and I haven't in years, given to panhandlers, but I will tell you a story. Many years ago, I was like 19, and I was working at, I think they call it in Los Angeles, the Pacific Stock Exchange. I think that's what they call it, the Pacific Stock Exchange, I think. But I worked the overnight shift, and there was a night, it was really cold. It was, I know in Los Angeles, it was really cold. And I was walking out of the Pacific Stock Exchange, and I had to park in a parking lot off-site. And there was a homeless guy. And he was sleeping on the sidewalk, sort of, the building had sort of like sections. And so there's like a little cove, if you will. And so I passed right by him, and it's like, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's when I got off. And he was lying there, and he was shivering. And it seemed like he was like sleeping but shivering, you know what I'm talking about? He was very cold. And so I took off the very warm jacket. This is like the guy called earlier, and he was talking about how when the Lord speaks to him, I don't mean to go religious, but when the Lord speaks to him and tells him this is the person to give to, that's kind of what happened to me. So I took off my jacket, and I laid it on him, and I hurriedly walked away because I was kind of, I don't know why I was embarrassed, but I was. And I didn't really think about it much after that. I gave him my coat. But a few days later, actually, there he was as I'm leaving, wearing my coat, and he stopped me. And he thanked me explicitly for what I had done. And I thought it was interesting because I don't know how he knew that it was me that gave him my jacket, that gave, him my jacket. But he did. He knew it was me. And he offered to give it back. And that jacket was a little dirty. And I said, no, man, you keep it. But that really did. For a long time, that changed my perspective, because here was somebody that was not asking for food and had never asked me for food or money or anything. He was like kind of always milling about, hanging around, but he never asked me for anything. And so in his case, I could just tell that this was a man who needed help. But then, unfortunately, as I got older and I got more cynical, and I started seeing more of these panhandlers, and they would ask for money, they're refusing to work, they look like, they're well capable of having a job, like we have talked about ad nauseum on talk radio. I just stopped giving to panhandlers, and these days that is what I do. Nashville Rescue Mission here in Nashville. I work for a radio station, WTN. Every single year, we raise money for this incredible organization, the Rescue Mission. And the reason why it's so incredible is because they don't take money from the government. So there's none of those, strings attached. And number two, they do have a focus on God and spirituality and training people to become more productive in our society. Job training, job placement, that kind of thing. So that's what I do is I rarely, if ever, give to an individual person, but I give to a place where I know that my money is going to be well spent. And that money is being spent on helping people become more productive through, again, cleanup, like addiction, and then job training, getting people clean, and then reconnecting them with families in Christ. That's what I do. What do you do? The phone number is 866-90-RED. I got a lot more before I head out, too, by the way. Very quickly, want to say hello to Steve in Illinois on Red Eye Radio. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I listen to Red Eye most every night. The thought occurred to me that if the government was serious about cutting expenses, like this DOGE committee, that they could cease funding all non-governmental organizations.
Oh, yeah, the NGOs?
That would save them a pile of money.
Well, it would, and oftentimes those NGOs, I'm sure you probably know, Steve, but a lot of times those NGOs, they assist the government in the Biden administration in ushering in all of these illegal aliens. The NGOs will do a lot of the footwork, if you will. I understand. And and Steve, you're absolutely right, and I appreciate the call. There was a movement at one time, if I remember right, there was a movement to either stop funding or starting to restrict the funding for those NGOs. I'm not sure exactly what happened to that, but let me tell you something. The Democrats would lose their ever-loving mind if we did that. Rita is in Orange County, California on Red Eye Radio. Rita, thanks for calling in.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm calling because I used to be very cynical about the people that are out there in the streets asking for money, wanting free rides on the bus, and I used to get really frustrated. And I just look at them and I think, like, man, you're old enough to get a job. But I've realized recently, my eyes are open, like, they do have mental problems. They're not able to sustain a job, whether it's paranoia, depression, and they resort to doing drugs as a way to escape. I mean, when you see them walking down the street, filthy, with, feces, what normal person does that? They are mental.
And here's the tough part, and Rita, here's the tough part on that, because I agree with you, and I don't know if you were listening earlier, it's a 5-hour broadcast, so I understand if you missed it, but I went through the different types of people who ask for your money and the different types of people who are homeless. You've got the legit, veteran who has mental illness and they need help. You have the people who are not simply, but they're addicted to drugs. Maybe they don't have mental illness, but they are suffering from addictions. Those also are people that we need to help. And there's also the panhandlers, if you will, the ones that just don't want to work. There's also people who decide that they don't want to conform with the system. So there's those people as well. And so part of, if you've ever been, you're in Orange County, right? So I know that in Anaheim, for example, near Disneyland, you know how you have those big, I don't know what you call them, but the reservoirs, where the water flows through, where they had a homeless enclosure, homeless encampment in some of those places. And part of my frustration has been, and you look at San Francisco, it's the same thing, where you've got all of these people. And I understand that everybody's got their problems, but then my frustration is, what gives them the right to destroy a community? So there's two different sides to the story. You're absolutely right, Rita, 100,000%. There are people with mental illness, and they've got addictions and everything else, and I get that, and that may be true, but when there are hordes of these folks, and they destroy neighborhoods, then my sympathy becomes less and less, because I'm seeing formerly really great neighborhoods being destroyed. And here's the deal. I don't exactly know what the answer is, but what I do know is that places like, for example, San Francisco used to be incredible. And now San Francisco, because of the Democrat policies of the knuckleheads there in San Francisco and elsewhere, those neighborhoods are destroyed because of the homeless issue. And I appreciate the call. And you're right. I don't think there is a right answer here, because every single type of person that I just mentioned, the person who has mental illness, they have a different path to recovery if they have one. The people that are addicted to drugs, they have a different path. The people that just don't want to be part of the system and they want to live in a reservoir, or they want to live on a sidewalk somewhere, I don't know. I don't know what to do with those people. I simply don't. But the problem is nobody does. I think I remember reading a story. I think it was California, where they had, and I should have asked you about it, but in California, they had this massive program to help the homeless people, and they spent like millions of dollars. And after it was all spent and the plan was executed, you know what they figured out? They figured out that they spent millions of dollars and they had more homeless people. So, yeah, I'm a little cynical. Ralph is in Glendora, California. Ralph, I may have spoken to you before. That's where I grew up. How are you?
Yeah, I didn't know Charter Oak had a home economics class.
They did, but in fairness to me, it was back in 1985 when I was in that home ec class. So yeah, well, I looked great in an apron.
Well, you played football too. I think you mentioned that. They have quite a good football team over there. What I was going to let you know is on my way to Bishop sometimes, I stop at Mojave. There's a gas station. It's the first one you enter. It's called Fast Trip. Every time I've stopped at that gas station, there's always been somebody asking for money. Well, I told your screener I usually just give $1. I mean, nothing more than that. Even if I know it's going to be misused, I figured it's not going to hurt me, and maybe it will help him. Once there was a lady that worked at a food bank here in Azusa, and I was watching how she worked at the food bank. There was people waiting in line. There was one guy in tank top, flip flops, on his cell phone, and I asked her, "How do you deal with giving food away to guys like this, able-bodied men?" And she says, "You know what? What we do here is good work. It's God's work. What he does with what we give him is between him and God." And that kind of stuck with me. And so I try to help. I try to help people when I can. I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but at the same time, what he does with what I give him, it's or her, it's between them and God. But at the same time, you bring up such a good point. If you do this out of good intentions, you know what's going to happen to the community.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's sad.
You know. And there is something in San Gabriel Valley. It's called the San Gabriel Valley Coalition for the Homeless. Before the COVID lockdown, this was going on every winter, and every church would take on the duties for 2 weeks and take care of folks. You know, they'd give them food, cots, sleeping quarters, and a resource for when they're done there. You know, they even had a dentist show up and beauty folks to try to help these folks. But at the same time, they also tried to give them a resource for a future life, you know, job and training and things like that. And then COVID lockdown stopped it all.
Well, that's unfortunate. And here's the deal. And Ralph, I appreciate the call. Here's the COVID's over, and we need places like that. I was talking about the Nashville Rescue Mission, where they prepare you for life after addiction. And, I mean, do we need more of that? It sounds like we do, but I do appreciate the call. Dan Mandis here, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. We'll come back next here on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. The guys, Gary and Eric, they get back. They return to Red Eye Thursday morning after the new year. And so this is where I tell you that if you'd like to hear my show weekly, daily, as a matter of fact, I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and you can find out more about that show at 997WTN.com. It's 6 to 10 Eastern Time, 5 to 9 Central, and so you can find us on all of the various streaming apps. And if you're one of those folks that likes to watch a radio show, I don't understand why. However, you can watch that on Facebook and also X and YouTube. So there you go. Rachel Maddow, listen to what she said. Because the media is doing all of this mea culpa, right? Where the things that they got wrong in 2024. She says, I thought people would be more unnerved by J.D. Vance. Yeah. She says that she thought that people would be scared of J.D. Vance, and she just doesn't understand why people weren't. Doesn't make any sense to Rachel Maddow. How does she have a job again?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.